Mike French in the Quad in London. I'm Tom Keene in New York. Covers markets. More market coverage today. More data checks. Karen Moscow with extended Bloomberg Radio data checks for America later today. Futures up 15. Dow futures up 102. I don't know what that will get you at 3 p.m. This afternoon. A little bit of a lift. Next screen, please, just so we can show the VIX. The VIX 31.78 is a good stick in a 68. 1.69 points. 31.77 on the VIX. Yield elevated this morning. Francine?
Yeah, Tom, look, what I'm looking at in Europe, they were down, they were up, now they're pretty much trading sideways. I think a lot of the investors that we spoke to yesterday maybe called the end of the end of volatility too soon. I am looking not only at the U.S. stocks index futures, which I think will give us more of a sense of where today goes, but the BOE volatility index dropping some 5.8%. Still with us, Stephanie Flanders of Bloomberg Economics, and of course Jeffrey Yu of UBS. Stephanie, when you look at the markets, I mean, you've been in the markets for a long time. Before joining Bloomberg, what does this week tell us? Is there a volatility problem, or is it just pent-up volatility suppression coming to the fore?
I mean, there's a lot of things that we were expecting to see, maybe a little bit earlier in the cycle. I mean, it's funny, I remember in my old incarnation at JP Morgan, we used to sit and talk a lot about the unloved rally or the unloved bull market. This is kind of the unfeared correction almost, although, of course, there's been some people who were hurt, particularly earlier in the week, by some of those particular instruments. You know, by and large, I would say in the institutional investor community, people are pretty calm about this. And even with the further fall yesterday, they know that this is part of moving to a higher vol regime, a sort of later stage of the cycle regime, but one with those good economic fundamentals. So it has been an interesting week because the numbers are not really telling you what people's sentiment is when you talk to the long-term investors.
What if it spreads to credit?
You know, I think what has been, I mean, if you have one lesson out of this is that the volatility is back and that's not going to go away, at least, you know, from a week-to-week basis. I think the other message was this particularly was pretty hard to diversify out of. So it wasn't one of those corrections where you could easily employ the normal, you know, negative correlations. But it was still, you know, it's still something that they're looking at, I should think, going forward.
All right, Stephanie and Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us. Stephanie Flanders, Bloomberg Senior Executive Editor for Bloomberg Economics, and Jeffrey Yu of UBS. Now, coming up next, we speak with James Sweeney of Credit Suisse. He's chief economist there. We'll talk market correction and avoiding the shutdown. This is...
new volatility. Also, Doug Cash on the joy of cash. OMG, an all-nighter in Washington. No, not the thermodynamics of French majors at Georgetown. The Senate acts, the House acts. Now, chronic trillion-dollar deficits. We go to Washington in a moment, and we consider the road taken, well, from reflation to the new inflation. Good morning, everyone. Good Friday morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance from our world headquarters in New York, also from London. Francine, let us just review where we are on this Friday morning. I believe we're trying to get the market open, the festivities in Washington, but also important conversations in London as well.
Yeah, important conversation because once again, actually, Tom, to put it very clearly, there's media speculation that there's about a group of 70 MPs trying to keep an eye and even topple Theresa May if they see what it would be a Brexit betrayal, therefore being too soft to the EU. But I spoke to one of the key people this morning on the first hour surveillance, and he denied any press reports.
It's interesting. It always seems to come up on a Friday to get us to an eventful weekend in the United Kingdom. Right now, we need a news briefing with our first word news in New York City. Here's Taylor Riggs.
Tom, Francine, the Congress has ended one of the shortest U.S. government shutdowns on record. Hours after the partial shutdown began at midnight, the House passed a 2-year budget bill that raises federal spending by almost $300 billion. It also puts the debt ceiling on hold for a year. President Trump's promised to sign the bill. Republican Senator Rand Paul had blocked a Senate vote for hours. He was unhappy over the extra government spending in the measure. And the ballooning budget deficit under President Trump may make the global market frenzy worse. The 2-year budget deal approved by the Senate would push the deficit even higher. Before that, Bank of America had warned that the deficit is on track to exceed 5% of GDP. That is the largest for the economy while at full employment since World War II. And for the first time, a member of the dynasty that rules North Korea is officially visiting the South. Kim Jong-un's sister arrived today for opening ceremonies of the Winter Olympics. She'll meet with South Korea's President Moon Jae-in for lunch tomorrow. British Prime Minister Theresa May is telling her team not to compromise on Brexit. According to officials who work closely with her, May wants to aim high in demands for an ambitious free trade deal. Those officials say May will not be drawing up any fallback plans for dealing with the European Union, at least until talks are well advanced. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Taylor Riggs. This is Bloomberg. Francine, Tom.
Taylor, thanks so much. More data checks through the morning with Bloomberg equities, bonds, currencies, commodities, a bounce. I don't know what that's worth once you get to 2 p.m. in the afternoon, up 18 on S&P futures, Dow futures up 127, oil not part of the story, euro with a little bit of a bouncer, I would watch that, and yen through the day. On to the next screen, Tania, if you would, the VIX, really the barometer of all, 32, 33, down 2 big figures, 31.51, the Dow close, and I'm looking at yields elevated. They should be green, up 2 basis points in yield, up 3 basis points in the 10-year yield, watching the linkage of yield to markets, very much so. Francine?
Yeah, Tom, first of all, I've enjoyed our coverage on especially our blog at T-Live, if you're a Bloomberg user, very much. And this is what I'm looking at in the market. So European stocks pretty much unchanged, a little bit down, but actually not as down as they were earlier. But in any stock market correction, it's very clear that you want to watch for contagion, right? How far it spills over into other asset classes. And if it even touches the real economy, we're not there yet, but certainly credit markets, probably the ones that you would watch out for, Tom.
Very good. Francine, thank you so much. Right now, we need to go to Washington. Eric Wasson is completely prepared for the turmoil of Washington. He has one of the great degrees of America, philosophy out of Amherst College. Eric, you needed all of your philosophical training to get through the last 24 hours. What did you learn from Speaker Ryan? What did you learn from the Republicans as they moved to this vote?
Well, I learned that Speaker Ryan is willing to play hardball. Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader, tried to bring down the budget bill that would have ended the government shutdown and failed to do so. 73 Democrats ended up going along with this spending deal that was in fact negotiated by both parties, even without a stronger commitment from Paul Ryan on the immigration bill. This is what Nancy Pelosi is seeking, a commitment for an open process to address the plight of the dreamers. These are undocumented immigrants who came to the country as children. That debate is going to
Watson, let's get out in front of the punditry right now. Did Paul Ryan just pull John Boehner? If he had 70 whatever Democrats come over, is his shelf life as narrow and small as John Boehner's was?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's really in jeopardy at this point. There's really no one who can really replace Paul Ryan in the House Republican conference at this point. I mean, certainly it is a big bill. It doesn't raise the debt ceiling, and there was a defection of 67 Republicans on this vote. However, he did get the majority of his conference, something that we call the Dennis Hastert rule, and that's important for maintaining his power.
Eric, what was the most surprising thing in the last 24 hours that you saw? I mean, where does this leave Paul Rand?
Where does it leave Paul Ryan, do you say?
Yeah.
I think Paul Ryan is Rand Paul. Well, it's interesting. He did make a play. The government did, in fact, shut down for 5 hours or so. Actually, the shutdown is continuing because President Trump has not yet signed the bill because of Rand Paul's filibuster on the floor. It really raised his profile. Someone who ran for president in 2016, of course, being beaten by Donald Trump, mostly on the fiscally conservative platform. And here he is, pointing out that for Trump, the deficit is really going to go from about $500 billion under Obama to over $1 trillion. An ironic thing for many Republicans in the Republican-controlled Washington.
Very good. Eric Watson, on short notice, thank you so much. Try to get some sleep in the next 90 minutes or so. We are going to do what we do on surveillance. We're going to give you perspective across all timelines. James Sweeney will join us from Credit Suisse here with a much broader economic picture. But right now, we go tactical. Douglas Cass is simply legendary. Out of Kidder Peabody a few years ago, he is with Seabreeze Partners in Florida, and he has been 80% in cash. Doug Cash, you bought on the bid last night. Why did you buy?
Well, you asked someone, Tom, about 40 minutes ago on surveillance, what would be an exogenous shock